SpongeGex here, and I just got Sonic X Shadow Generations for PlayStation 5. Now, since Sonic Generations is an older game, I've already discussed that one in the past, so I'm only going to focus on the Shadow Generations portion of this game. So overall, I really enjoyed this game, but just like every game since Sonic Unleashed, I'm not a fan of the controls or physics. The controls feel way too stiff and they're kind of hard to steer. Remember how in the adventure games you could actually run around in circles? Ever since Sonic Unleashed, character movements have been very stiff. The characters can't run in circles and instead run in misshapen triangles. For some reason, every time you try moving in a diagonal direction, the characters take a sudden halt and move very sluggishly. I miss the momentum and loose movement of the adventure games, and I wish they would bring that back, for crying out loud. The platforming is still as bad as it was in Sonic Forces. The jumps are too short, slow, and hard to land with. I still enjoyed this game a lot, but the controls really held it back from being a lot greater. While not as many levels as regular Sonic Generations, we still got a decent amount of gameplay, about 6 hours worth. That is, if you're taking your time to try to collect everything. So aside from a 3D hub world with many hidden items and challenges, we got 6 worlds to explore, each with 2 acts, with Act 1 being pure 3D levels and Act 2 being 2.5D side-scrolling levels. Unlike every game since Sonic Unleashed, I actually really enjoyed the side-scrolling levels this time around. They're the most fun, exciting, and well-designed side-scrolling levels I've ever seen in the 3D games. We've also got 4 missions for each world, ranging from challenges like reaching the goal of 100 rings, beating a level with only 1 ring, using Chaos Control to freeze obstacles to reach the goal, defeat a number of enemies, etc. So upon beating 2 missions, you get a key, which is necessary to opening boss gates. Upon beating a mission level, a bell will appear above the mission portal. Now, the game doesn't bother mentioning this, but if you do a homing attack on the bell, it causes a music note to appear, which you have to chase down for a piece of concept art. Some of these are really hard to catch. Within each level and missions are 3 hidden keys. They call them keys, but they're really emblems. There's like a green one, a yellow one, and a blue one. And they're needed to open these optional treasure chests that are hidden throughout the overworld. And they contain concept art, music, and story recaps from past games featuring Shadow. There's also these little bolts that are hidden throughout the world. There's like 80 of them altogether, and if you give them to Orbot and Cubot, they'll use them to try to build a rocket that can take them out of this white void, and they promise to take Shadow with them if he fixes it. So I have no idea what happens if you get them all, because I only found like half of them probably, and I just know that after a certain amount, if you return to them, they'll give you a piece of concept art. So otherwise, I don't know if like the rocket leads to a true ending or just an extra bonus or something. I have no idea. Because either way, I don't think it'll lead to a secret ending though. Because either way, the end of the game shows Shadow and Rouge returning back to the real world, basically. So yeah. I just realized though, I think they left Omega and Big behind. So, unless they were somehow warped back to their original location before all this happened, I have no idea. But still, it kind of makes it look like they just left them to die. There's also these hard-to-reach balloons in the overworld that can be taken down with Shadow's new Doom Spear ability. And these contain pages to Gerald Robotnik's diary. And they contain interesting lore and photos about both Gerald and Maria's life, which led to Shadow's creation. It's a very interesting side feature, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sega ends up producing physical copies of these for collectors. I love how the back even has an Eggman sticker claiming property of the Eggman Empire. That's so Eggman. And so, I normally don't care about reading lore within video games, but this is one case where I'm glad I gave it a chance. It was great to learn more about Gerald and Maria's lives, which only makes it sadder when you remember their fates. My only complaint is that certain words are censored out for no reason, like Master Emerald, Chaos Emerald, Gizoid, Emerald, Maria, Gerald's 2 brothers, and more. It also retcons Emerald being an invention of Gerald. I'm pretty sure that was what they implied in Sonic Battle. They made it sound like he was an invention of Gerald, just like Shadow. But here it mentions that Emerald was found as a robot that fell from the heavens. So yeah, that kind of sucks. I don't really like that retcon. The concept art is really neat as well. It even includes character sheets from Sonic X. I was not expecting that to ever be acknowledged again in a Sonic video game. The only other game to do that was in the mission mode from Sonic Adventure DX. However, the concept art does not give us the option to zoom in on the artwork, which is a real disappointment. I would have loved to have seen these images in HD, and some of the art is pretty hard to see due to the zoomed out camera. It does let us zoom in on Gerald's journal entries, so why not the same for the art? I don't get that. Also in the hub world are these challenges that include racing to collect 100 rings under a time limit or collecting watches under a time limit. Completing these will give you another rare piece of concept art. The ring missions weren't too bad, but the watch missions on the other hand, they are frustrating as hell. They took me more than 10 tries to complete these lengthy challenges. So the worlds in this game include Final Rush from Sonic Adventure 2, Rail Canyon / Bullet Station from Sonic Heroes, Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06, best level in the game, Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces, and for some reason we got Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers, which makes absolutely no sense. During the announcement trailer for this, they flat out said the levels in this were to be from past games featuring Shadow. Yet not only was Shadow nowhere to be seen or heard of in Sonic Frontiers, but that game didn't even exist yet during the timeline where Sonic Generations takes place. The whole game's purpose was about taking past stages. That's the only thing that the time travel really involved, the past. And so it makes no sense for it to cut into the future out of nowhere. It just felt forced into this game for brand recognition of their latest game, but it just does not fit in this game at all. The final level is Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2. I was honestly disappointed that despite being a heavy inspiration for the game, there were no levels from Shadow the Hedgehog in this game. Seriously, we got 2 levels from Sonic Adventure 2 and 1 from a game that Shadow wasn't even in, and they couldn't bother adding a single Shadow the Hedgehog level like Westopolis, Sky Troops, or Black Comet. Seriously, what the hell? Within each Act 1 of the game includes dimension-bending segments where Doom's Eye messes with Shadow, and the game requires you to attack Doom's Eye before the level ends in order to collect a certain insignia emblem. So all the emblems are needed to reach the final levels and battle. I somehow missed getting one of them during my first playthrough. It was the one in Sunset Heights. So make sure you do a homing attack on Doom's Eye before the level ends, otherwise you'll have to start all over. So there's also 4 boss fights in the game, including the Bio-Lizard from Sonic Adventure 2, Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes, and oh boy, that was the most frustrating boss in the game. The tail whipping segment annoyed me, especially since there's a part where you have to jump twice in a row, but no matter how fast I tried double tapping the jump button, Shadow never bothered doing a second jump to dodge the second swipe. Also, make sure you go to the options menu and shut off Move Tutorial, or you'll get these pesky button prompts that prematurely pop up, and they may fool you into wanting to jump at the wrong time, which will lead to you taking damage. I had a less frustrating time with these bosses after shutting it off. The third boss fight was against Mephiles from Sonic 06, and that was honestly my favorite boss fight in the game. It was surprisingly easy, but it was the most fun spectacle out of all the bosses. It just felt the most satisfying. The final boss is, not surprisingly, Black Doom from Shadow the Hedgehog. Aside from Shadow's Chaos Control, which allows him to freeze time to stop obstacles and make platforming easier, Shadow gains a lot of new abilities based on his alien DNA. He gets an upgrade to Chaos Spear called Doom Spear, which is a projectile attack that can lock up to 5 targets, and it can also be used to stun enemies and activate switches. Doom Surf allows him to ride a manta ray made of dark tentacles, so he can travel across water. He can also do a spin attack to smash crates and deflect enemy attacks with this form. Surprisingly, this ability is used a lot across the game, which is good because I actually like this ability. It was one of my favorites in the game. The steering could have been a little better, though. The worst ability in the game is the Doom Morph, which allows Shadow to transform into like this tentacle blob, and he can go through this dark goop and swing across floating globs of darkness. Now, it's super easy for this ability to cancel itself out. I hate how it can only be triggered by touching these balls of goop. I'd rather it just trigger by jumping into the goop, just like how the surf ability is activated automatically by touching water. The worst part of this form is the faulty swinging mechanic. I learned that the only way to gain extra height is to let go of the swing button when Shadow reaches the bottom center of his swing. It makes absolutely no sense from a physics perspective or a gameplay mechanic, and the game fails to mention this to players ahead of time, making some paths and collectibles impossible to reach. I was only able to figure this out because I bothered looking it up on YouTube, and someone was kind enough to post a video addressing this issue. So, luckily, I'm not the only one who had this problem. So, unless you know ahead of time, yeah, you're going to have a real hard time with this ability. There was even a point where the ability glitched out on me. There's a point where I used it, and it somehow, it glitched out to a point where the character launched high into the air, and they fell into an infinite falling loop. It's like, what the heck? I was forced to restart the level because of that. So yeah, this was my most hated ability in the game. Finally, there's the Doom Wings, which serve as Shadow's super form in this game. It takes 50 rings to activate. You gotta press L1 and R1 for it to activate. So not only does it give Shadow slower and easier to control jumps, but it drains Shadow's rings in the process, just like in the super forms in past games. It makes Shadow invincible and allows him to glide through the air by pressing R2 mid-jump. It was my favorite ability in the game. It makes sense that they saved it for last. So aside from the disappointing morph ability, I really enjoyed Shadow's new powers in this game. They were a huge improvement over the annoying Wisp power-ups from Colors and Lost World. They just halted the gameplay every time. So Shadow's powers enhance the gameplay without slowing things down. It just adds to the progression of the game, and I loved it. I'm just disappointed that Chaos Blast from Shadow the Hedgehog was not implemented. It would have made some boss fights more entertaining if you could build up a gauge and deal extra damage by using that, and it could have been useful for destroying objects and finding hidden items or paths in the overworld. Yeah, missed opportunity there. Spoilers ahead, but the last thing I have to discuss is the story. So honestly, despite all the hype for it, especially with the promotional animated prologue, Shadow Dark Beginnings, seriously, go see that if you haven't already. It is amazing. I honestly wish the cutscenes in this game were as good as that, and I really wish Sega would make either a series or a full-length movie out of this animation style. It is great. I honestly found the story pretty underwhelming. I might be in the minority here. I'll bet a lot of people love the story, but it has a lot of nostalgia, but I felt like it was missing heart. With Shadow reuniting with Maria and Gerald, I was expecting this game to tear me up, but I felt the scenes were poorly executed. I hated how it kept using the same edgy music from the hub world during these encounters. It should have used more somber music. I was also very disappointed with Shadow's interactions with Maria and Gerald. Maria and Gerald, on the other hand, they were handled pretty well, and they got some great lines, but Shadow is where I was disappointed. I was hoping Shadow would have hugged Maria and told her something like, "I missed you," or instead he's still his regular grouchy, moody self, keeping silent, turning away from them with his arms folded, and running from them abruptly without saying anything. It just left me thinking, wow, what an asshole. These are your family. You know they died, and you didn't bother making the best out of seeing them again. What a jerk. Of course he wants to find a way to alter time so they don't have to die, but he ends up having to give up that idea so he doesn't risk corrupting the timeline further. Sure, the game does pull off a Sonic X Season 2 finale where at the very end he runs away and you see a tear fly off of the back of his head as it hits Rouge right in the face. So it still doesn't change my disappointment in Shadow's interactions with Maria. I would have teared up if when he ran away from Maria as she was fading away. What if he abruptly stopped and tried running back towards her so he could give her a hug, only for her to fade away right as he reached her? That would have been such an emotional gut punch. But the game played this story way too safe, and it just left me very underwhelmed in the process. So the way they tried tying in Shadow's boss fight with Sonic also felt poorly executed, and I hate how it retcons the theory that people made, how Sonic's battle against Shadow was actually his past self from before he redeemed himself to save the planet in Sonic Adventure 2. The dialogue and fight between Sonic and Shadow just came out of nowhere, just lame requotes from past games like "I found you, Faker," or "It'll be a date to die for." I honestly cringed at these forced callbacks. For no reason, it throws in a plot twist that the emerald Sonic got from Shadow in that boss fight was actually the fake emerald that Tails made in Sonic Adventure 2. And Rouge was able to swap it out with the real emerald off-screen with the fake one, so Sonic could go super in the final battle of Sonic Generations. It felt like a change that did not need to happen. It would have made more sense for Shadow to just hold on to the fake emerald and give Sonic the real one in the first place, because as Sonic Adventure 2 proved, Chaos Control can still be done with the fake emerald. So the only reason they did this was obviously to explain why Shadow can still use Chaos Control throughout the game, but either way, the execution just felt forced. On the bright side, it didn't force us to do the boss fight all over again, but from Shadow's perspective, it was all done in cutscene form. I also hated how Shadow still has his hissy voice by Kirk Thornton. While Kirk Thornton did a slightly better job in this game, I just felt like it ruined what should have been heartwarming scenes between him and Maria. I wish his voice actually showed more vulnerability during those scenes, like you can really feel his heart breaking as he talks to Maria, but nope, he's still as emotionless as ever, and I still absolutely hate Rouge the Bat's voice. I wish they'd just hire the voices of Shadow and Rouge from Sonic Prime, because they're, in my opinion, the best voices those characters have ever had. But despite all my nitpicking, overall, I really did enjoy this game, but the faulty controls really hindered this from being a perfect game. I'll still go as far as to say that this is the best 3D Sonic game since the boost formula was introduced. I was honestly never a big fan of the boost gameplay. I actually enjoyed it in this game this time around. I just wish the controls were a lot better and more responsive. Overall, I'd give the game a 7 out of 10. That's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and have a great day.